welcome to This Is Our Barrow podcast. I'm Callum Bell.
I'm Alex Wright.
I'm Britta Schmitz.
And today we're going to be talking about Britta Schmitz, who works for the Fintern Foundation. Can you introduce yourself, Britta? So what do you do in the Fintern Foundation?
So, that's a very interesting question, actually, because I hope that what I'm doing is living my purpose. So I came to the Fintern Foundation and earlier in my life, I came to Erid. That was the first place where I lived, which is also connected to the Fintern Foundation. It's a small island. So I definitely didn't come for a job. So it was not like, oh, I want to do this, I want to do this. I see that every job I'm doing is hopefully an expression of the purpose I have in life. And I feel that my purpose is to connect or to support people to connect more to nature, to spirit, to themselves, to others, live with a more open heart. And what I want to encourage people to do most of all is to see you can do anything you want. You can live the life of your dreams. And, this is really what I feel I want to encourage people to do, to live happy, fulfilled lives, because I think, for me, this is what I really want to do. So at the moment, I am working in social media. So during COVID, I started to take pictures. Actually, I started taking pictures for a friend of mine who had cancer. And I get really emotional about that because she is my best friend from primary school and she had cancer. And so I started taking pictures for her and showing her just the beauty we have around us here every day. And it really, really helped her. And, she was so happy and so grateful. So this is how I actually started taking pictures. And then I started filming during COVID. And then Alex actually and Janet, who were in the communications team at the time, asked me if I would like to start making some posts on Facebook. So this became the expression of how I live, what I see as my spiritual purpose here at the moment. And before that, I did different things. I was focalizing, which means holding the focus for the team. That was my focus at the time for Couleur Garden, which is our organic vegetable producing garden here in the Fintern Foundation. I held programs, our staff intake program, experience weeks, other essence and core programs. So many different things. And when I moved to Erid, I did a lot of cleaning and cooking and candle making and all sorts of things.
So you've done many different things for and in the Fintern community, but you always do it with the same higher intention, higher purpose.
Yeah, so I never came here, as I said before, it wasn't like, oh, I want a job, I go there. It was like I wanted to live a very different life to what I'm living right now. So this is why I'm going. So it's a very different approach, I think.
Your friend that you mentioned, is that someone from where you grew up?
Yes, so she was my best friend in primary school and she is doing very well now. And so that's really nice. And she's one of the people I talked to you earlier and I said there are lots of people who want to come and visit me at the moment here in Fintern. I mean, I've been in Scotland now for 14 years and very few people came to visit. My mom came once and then maybe a couple of other friends. And then friends I've met in Fintern who keep coming back. But friends from Germany, I think less than 4 or 5, I think, ever came to visit me here. But this year, lots want to come. And Jenny, that's her name, she will come. So, yeah.
And you were saying before that you reckon that the influx in your friends who want to come and visit, you think that's related to COVID and lockdown and maybe people looking for something different after COVID and lockdown? Of course, to see you as well.
I was just thinking, I thought no, I think they just really love me.
But maybe they would have seen you somewhere else other than Fintern before lockdown and COVID, but you thought...
So I'm not really sure what the motive is for each single one of them, but there's a feeling in me that I feel Because all of them are people who said, oh, I want to come visit you one day. I want to come visit you one day. But I think, I always get so emotional when I'm interviewed. But I feel like all these one days, I think after the pandemic, we realize now tomorrow might never happen. You know, the opportunities we have today might not be there tomorrow. I think that's what it really brought home for me. I mean, I remember at the very beginning of the pandemic, I talked to a friend who was considering moving back to Germany. And, you know, we had this discussion before any lockdown ever happened. She asked me, so what would you do? You know, like what would you do if they would close the borders, if you couldn't leave the country? And I was like, whoa. And then I said, if it was for 1 year, I would stay here. If it was forever, I would go home.
We're both having an emotional moment right now. And that's also got me thinking, if I was told that we didn't have a tomorrow, then it would all be about connecting with friends and family. And like maybe in my daily life I get caught up with so many other things. But that really just puts into focus what's important in life.
Yeah, and I think this is maybe what's happening. I mean, I don't know. I didn't ask my friends, but it seems to be like really... this famous question from Lord of the Rings, what are we doing with the time that is given to us? It's like really, what do we want to do? Or also Mary Oliver, she has this like, what are you going to do with this one wild and precious life? You know, it's really like, that's what we have given now. What do we want to do? And I feel like I ask myself the question every day. And of course, there are things I just have to do. I need food, I need money, I need a job, of course. But, you know, how do I want to do the things I need to do? And what do I want to do with the time I really have for myself? Yeah.
Something that I've been thinking about a lot recently is the line that this isn't a rehearsal.
Yeah.
Right now isn't a rehearsal.
Yeah.
This is the actual thing we're in, the actual show, you know, the big...
Yeah.
I think for a long time before, I was waiting for my life to start.
Yeah.
Always waiting for that moment, okay, something's going to happen and it's going to make my life start. But then I realised, oh wait, no, I'm in it.
Yeah. And this is actually like what I felt like very strongly, that when I was 31, my partner died of cancer. And, you know, before that, I always thought maybe one day. So I was trying to live like the normal life. And actually, when I was quite young, I always had like spiritual experiences. And when I was 14, I went to Taizé, which is like a monastery in France where it's like a ecumenical, I don't know how to say that, but like, they welcome people from all religions and there are lots of young people. So I went there for a week with school and I had this like amazing experience. So I was always quite spiritual and I always wanted to live a different life, but I always tried to do the normal thing, you know, study, finish these studies, finish those studies, you know, go for a job, because I felt, what I was really longing for, I can't do that. It's only other people who can do that. Because I remember when I was studying and I was really not so happy with what I was doing and I was writing another paper, but I saw this article in a magazine about Christiania, which is a community in, I can't even remember, Denmark or something. Yeah. And, you know, they had all these amazing buildings and there were these stories about the carpenters who built these hobbit-like houses and they lived together in this community. And I remember taking these pages out of the magazine and putting them in a box because I was like, this is what I would really like to do. But of course, I can't do that. I have to finish my studies. I have to live my life. Of course, that can never happen. Only other people can do it. I could never do that. And, you know, I remember how this article spoke to me and how I loved the pictures and how I felt this longing in myself. And, today I'm in these articles. It's like really amazing. Like sometimes I realize that like, oh my God, now there are like TV crews asking me about this life. And then I go like, oh my God, if there's only one person that thinks, oh, if she can do it, I can do it, then I feel like this is a really beautiful thing. And I have people who give me this feedback. I will never forget, there's like this one guy who came to visit Erid, and man, it was 1st of May. We were all putting on the hippie clothes, dancing around the maypole. And I think he was a producer for music producer. And he was just sitting there, and I think he looked so super shocked. And then we had this walk over the island, and I talked to him about spirituality and the things we are doing. And I think he was a bit like, what the hell is going on here? And then I met him again, maybe a couple of years later, and he said, Britta, this one walk we had over the island, it completely changed my life. I'm now doing singing and yoga and whatnot, and it really changed my life completely. So that's really beautiful. And going back to Benny, my partner, dying, I think for many people it needs, or in my experience, having listened to many people who are choosing to live a different life, it seems to be that there's often like one big moment in their lives where something tragic or something just happens, where they start questioning things and go like, is that really what I want to keep doing for the rest of my life? I don't feel fully alive. I don't feel like, that this is the right thing. And maybe like COVID, the pandemic is more like a global moment, or has been for all of us, kind of giving us this little awakening moment. Like, look, what we take for granted today might not be there tomorrow. So let's live. I don't know. And we still have to earn money, and we still have to buy food and cook and clean and all that. But, what do we do with the extra time we have?
And you were talking before how you seen that article, for instance, or you seen these things from a distance, and you wanted to go to these type of places, and eventually...
it's so the thing is that... I saw these things from a distance that were like kind of long-term, but I did a lot of short-term things. So I went to Taizé, as I said before, like many weeks, like all through my youth. And I went there like and did weeks in silence or all sorts of things.
So it's like building up over your life?
Well, no. So then I actually had a break of that, where I was like, I'm not doing that spiritual stuff anymore. I just want to be normal, because I also suffered with depression for a lot of my life. I think it started in my mid-20s. I mean, I saw people and they called it depressive episodes, so they didn't qualify it as like a proper disease. But, I was definitely having depressive episodes, like lying in bed, not wanting to get out and feeling life doesn't make sense. And so where did I want to go with it? Well, I did lots of things. No, I can't. I lost my thread now.
How did you eventually end up on Erid? Like,
No, but what I wanted to say is that I tried to not do all these spiritual things, So I was doing, and I remember my professor at university, who was my mentor, because often when I came back from these things, I was sick or sad, and he said, maybe you're not getting, I also get emotional again. He said, maybe you're not getting sick because you've been there. Maybe you're getting sick because you came back.
Oh.
I know. And that's like really, really early on. And it's like, wow, that, I haven't thought about that sentence he said for a long time. And now that I think about it, it really goes in, and it's like, wow, because when I was in Taizé, I mean, you have to imagine that. I will just go on a little episode about Taizé, because I was 14. Our teacher showed us a film about Taizé. All we wanted to do is like party and drink and have fun and not go to school. So we went to Taizé, where it was all about spirituality, about singing, about Christ, all these things. So what we did is we didn't go to church. We were sitting around, we were drinking, we were smoking, we were young. And I will never forget this moment because it really changed my life. I was sitting on this meadow smoking, because it was during the day, we weren't drinking. So I was sitting there with a friend, and he had this long hair, curls. He was wearing this whole heavy metal outfit, and we were that cool. Then these guys came who are called permanents, I think, permanent people who are staying there permanently, and they were ushering us into the church. And we were like, oh no, we want to sit here and be cool. So they ushered us into the church, and I was sitting down. So you're sitting in this big kind of like shed, basically. And there are like candles, and then there are the monks, and then there are hundreds and thousands of young people, mainly young people, sitting on the floor. And, we sat down, and there's this beautiful singing, and it was like, we both were like, oh my God, that's it. It was really like, wow. And, since then we were always going to church and really enjoying it. Our parents were like, oh my God, what happened to our children when we came back? Because we all had these, well, I can't speak for everybody, but many of us had this experience that was just, whatever you want to call it, oneness or interconnectedness or connection with the divine, whatever happened for each and every one of us. I think we didn't even know at the time, but it really touched something very, very deeply within us. So at that time where I tried to be normal again, because I was like, people said, oh, you have this depressive episodes because you're not leading a normal life. You just need a normal boyfriend and a normal job and a normal car. And, just squeeze yourself into what society tells you have to do, and then you will be fine. Yeah. So I tried to do that, and I was getting worse and worse. And so then in the end, I had when I did my exams at university, I had quite a strong depressive episode. It was actually the first real one where I felt this feels different from being low. This feels like a whole different ball game. It's just I think you can only know what it is when you experience it, because it feels so different. And then I started doing spiritual things again. So actually at some point when I was really low, I was so low that people wouldn't recognize me because my energy was so different that I could sit next to somebody I knew very well and they would not recognize me, not because I looked so differently, but I felt like not myself. And so a friend said, hey, do you want to come firewalking with me in France? And I was like, basically, I would do anything to not feel what I'm feeling now, because I was basically like this hollow thing trying to keep doing things, but nothing could really make me feel anything.
Firewalking, like walking on flames? What is firewalking exactly?
Yeah, so basically you walk on glowing coals, which is another thing where I felt like, ooh, only other people can do it. Because years ago I'd been to Sri Lanka and there were people who lived there, and me and my boyfriend at the time, and somehow they got us into the ceremony. We were just walking by and they did all these things like hooks in their body and fire walking and they did the whole thing. And, for me, it was totally clear. Only they can do it. I could never do that. So then this guy said, you want to come fire walking? And I had the same thing. Like, what do you mean? And he was like, yeah, we are doing the ceremony. We are lighting a fire. And then we walk on top of the glowing coals. And I was like, what? With bare feet? He was like, yeah. And I was like, okay. So I was like, I'll just try it. And it was so amazing because when I arrived there, I felt like, oh, these are my people, It was really... And, it's not that, so this is the thing also with Christiania, that I was like, I never wanted the full blown hardcore, super hippie stuff. So it was all people you and me, which super full-blown hardcore hippie people are also, but it was not like an exclusive gang of people that had to be a certain way. I think this is possibly
like
the
no
best.
set belief system.
Yeah, so it was open to everybody, and it was a very mixed group. So it was not just people, going down one special route. And so, yeah, I felt like very at home. And then we did this ritual, and before that we did this little workshop. And, I remember how the lady who was holding the workshop asked, so what are your greatest fears? And I said, my greatest fear is that I just am not getting the thing that everybody knows, that of course you don't walk over the glowing coals with your bare feet. You have to put this extra cream on, or, do some extra thing. And I'm the only one who is so stupid and didn't get it and just walks over glowing coals. And afterwards, everybody goes like, oh my God, how stupid are you? That was my biggest fear at the moment. And then we did it. We did the fire walk. I walked over the glowing coals. It felt like I've never done anything else in my life. It was amazing. And I was on a real high afterwards.
Did you not burn your feet?
No, I didn't. And afterwards, I was sitting at the fire with a guy, and he was saying, I was like, hey, how are you doing? And he said, oh, yeah. And I was like, hey, what's going on? And he said, oh, I have these big blisters under my feet. And I was like, why? And he said, we just did a fire walk. And I was like, what? You can get blisters from that? I had no idea. And he said, yeah. And then later I found out that in the fire walking movement I joined, they call them fire kisses. So they say, if you have a blister under your foot, it's a bit like acupuncture or acupressure, that whatever needs healing in your life then gets a bit of extra energy, because it's nothing big. It's just like a little blister. And then but anyway, I was really like believing nothing can ever happen, because they, made me believe that. Anyway, nothing happened for me. And what I noticed is really, instead of like when I tried to do other things, it was often like a peak experience, but then I would go down again. But with the fire walking, I felt, I'm actually quite high up, and it lasts quite long. And
how long's quite long?
Huh?
How long is quite long?
I don't know, but it was actually not that I felt, I need another fire walk to get there again. It was more like a steady, I'm getting better kind of feeling. And the thing is also, you're not just doing the fire walk because it's cool. You're doing the fire walk because you're going for a vision. It's like, this is how I want my life to look, and things are in the way. And the glowing coals are actually symbolizing the blockages you put in your way. So basically it's beliefs like, I'm not good enough, I'm too stupid, it's only for other people, not for me. Like all the things I had very strongly when I was looking at these people living beautiful life in Christiania, but I can't do that. So all these belief systems are symbolized in the carpet of the glowing coals. And you visualize that behind that is where you really want to go. And so it's like I'd rather burn my feet than not go where I really, really want to go. And my firewalking teacher, Peggy Dillon, whom I dearly love, and she really inspired me, she said, and I get emotional again, but she says and it's one thing to walk over your fears, and it is another thing to dance on them. Which I think is so beautiful. So we did lots of dancing
in the coals as well.
Over the coals.
The fire.
And then there are people who have all sorts of theories and go like, it only works because of this, that, and the other, and it's so short, and you only do a few steps or whatnot. And I say, we've done 10-meter long ones. So it's not that. So what they say in the firewalking movement, they say that when your energy matches the energy of the fire, and you do exercises before to really get into this different energy, then you can walk the fire unharmed. And this is what tribes say. Firewalking has been done all over the planet for hundreds and thousands of years. So it's many, many tribes. And there's one African tribe, I think they're called the Kung. And they say, when your energy matches the energy of the fire, you can walk the fire unharmed. So, yeah. So anyway, I was doing all these things. and feeling like my life is still only like at parts of the time exactly how I want it to be. Like when I do firewalks, I did this longer ritual, which is called a moon dance, where we are also in community. We are working together. We are eating together. We are all contributing.
Under the moon?
Yeah. And so that would take far too long to explain all that. But it's a beautiful ritual, which is about harmony between the male and the female. So it's like and it's an ancient Mayan ritual, which has been forbidden. And then, they brought it back up, like the native people of Mexico, they brought it back up into the public. So anyway, when I felt like I really want to live that all my life and all the time. I felt like it must be possible to do that and not just do it when I'm, on a workshop or when I'm doing a ritual. And then when Benny died, it felt like, I finally felt I have to make this decision, because I saw when he went, like, you don't take anything with you, only the memories. And I was depressed, which I think, of course. I had just done my PhD. I think, did I finish? Yeah, I had finished it, and then he died. And then I was working at university in Switzerland, writing for an application for a grant for something I really didn't believe in, analyzing profile pictures of Facebook users.
What was your study in general?
So in general, I first studied to be a primary school teacher, because I think this wish of positively influencing people's lives has always been within me. And I remember telling my parents when I decided to study to be a primary school teacher that this is what I wanted to do, because I really loved my primary school teacher, and she really, encouraged me to do good things, and I loved it. And I thought, maybe this is what I can do to give children a really good start in their life, and then that's a good way to influence them. And so first I studied to be a primary school teacher, and then I didn't feel ready to move into either a big city or a tiny village, become a primary school teacher, marry, have children, and you know how the rest of your life goes. Even though I have a wish of my life being like that somehow, but somehow it didn't take me then. Anyway, and then I studied some more, and I did a PhD where I basically did a qualitative research on young men between 20 and 30 and how they develop their gender identity. So that's what I did then. Yeah. And I worked at university in the education department, and it was not bad, because I had a really great mentor and professor, and the workshops and seminars I was holding were quite good, because they were about like learning with head, heart, and hand, and, like Montessori and Steiner approaches. And it was very experimental and quite good what we did, I think.
In Switzerland? Was this?
No, that was still in Germany.
Still in Germany. Mm-hmm. So I guess most of the things that you have gravitated towards and been involved with in your life, there are like common threads linking all of these. But it's led you here to Fintorn today. Erid first. So where did you first hear about the Fintorn community? Where was the point at which you seen this place and you were like, okay, I'm going to go and explore here? And then when was the point where you were like, okay, I'm going to live here?
So I was in where I did the firewalking was a retreat center in Switzerland in the Vosges Mountains. And after Benny died, I spent quite a few months there to help them. And I did lots of the firewalking. And there was a woman from Freiburg, not so far away. And they were doing, how do you call it? They said they are dancing a wave, and I was like, what is that? And then I found out it's like 5 rhythms dancing. That's how we call it in English. So in German they say like they're dancing a wave, and I was like, whoa, you know. And there were all these noises and the music, and you know, for me back then, now it feels quite normal, but back then I was like, what are they doing, you know? And they asked me if I want to join, and I was like, no. It was really like, for me, wow, what, like they are dancing so freely. There's no drinking. There's no what is going.
That also struck me when I first came here.
Yeah, right. Because it feels like, wow, that's really possible.
No one puking in the toilets.
I know, but they are dancing like crazy and seem all liberated. And I was like, ooh, that's weird. Isn't that interesting how we create our world? Going like, ooh, that's really weird. People dancing and having
people
fun
enjoying themselves. Yeah.
Without alcohol. How can that even be possible? So weird, huh? Yeah. Anyway, so they were dancing their thing, and then I told her, like, we were just talking, and I told her about my partner dying. Oh my God, that's such a long story. I have to try to cut it short. But anyway, she said, oh, you should really read Grace and Grit, which is a book by Ken and Treya Wilbur. And because this is the story of Treya, Ken Wilbur's wife, dying of cancer, and they're writing this book together, and it's absolutely beautiful. And she said, anybody who knows anybody who has cancer or has any connection with cancer should really read this book. And I was like, okay, I better read this book. And it was an amazing book, and I can also highly recommend to read it. And well, Treya has been in Findhorn, so Findhorn was mentioned, and I can't even fully remember what she wrote about Findhorn. I definitely remember she wrote about beautiful gardens and tea breaks.
Oh, there's lots of tea breaks, yeah.
and it was also about, like, I mean, I haven't read it in a long time, but she said something, or what I recall, or the impression I got was about, like, and people are living a different life there, and it's more balanced, and you work, but you also have tea breaks, you do creative things. And so it was really, and there's spirituality, there's meditation. So it felt like, wow, that could be, you know, interesting. And as the book was written in, I can't even remember, in the 90s, maybe, I'm not sure. But I thought, oh, I better look it up and see if this place still exists. And then I looked on the website, which actually looked quite good and quite professional. And you could see, wow, they're printing books, they're holding workshops. There is really this kind of like, oh, they try to change the world or have an impact. So it didn't feel like, oh, it's just this people are hanging out together doing what we don't really know, but not trying to give something into the world from that. So I felt like, oh, that's inspiring. And even though they said, like, don't book anything before you have confirmation that you are on the workshop, I booked my flights and was ready to go. And then I didn't have a place on the workshop, so I had to spend time somewhere else. And yeah, anyway, I did Experience Week in the end. And so I came here and did Experience Week, and I really enjoyed it. But I had just done all these like firewalking things and this really like hardcore digging deep, bringing it all out things. So I was like, yeah, it's nice. It's good. It's gentle. I like it. But I was used to walking over fire or bending iron bars with a soft spot on my neck. So I was like really into like, oh, give me the hardcore thing, because I really don't want to feel my pain and I really want to move on. So anyway, I did Experience Week, and I felt like it's very nice, and I liked the Findhorn Foundation, but I knew at the time it's not for me at the moment, because there were so many things going on. As you said, oh yeah, there's the dancing here also. And then there's so much you can do. Like basically, like there's so much going on, and I'm a very sociable person. So I knew I would just do the same maybe I have done before in my other life, just differently. So I would just get involved and see people and just distract myself instead of really going inside and trying to heal whatever needs healing. So I was a bit sad because I was like, oh, I really thought that could be it. And then I was like, but it's not it. So
too busy here for that particular moment.
Yeah. So I was like, no, I can't do that right now. I was not in the right space. And then I remember we had Experience Week in Cluny. And I think it's also so interesting because, I just said like, oh, Experience Week, it was not so hardcore like the other things I did. But, it still changed my life. It's like you never know how it changes your life, but somehow it does. So even though I consciously thought like, oh, I've done more crazy stuff like that, it won't do that much for me. It totally did, but just not in such an obvious way. So yeah, that's really nice. Anyway, I was sitting in the sunshine room, looking into the brochure, opening it and seeing Arid. And it was really like this full-on download of, light coming in, and every cell of my body knew this is what I want to do. It was like completely clear. And what followed was quite a long period of me really wanting to go. I mean, maybe a year or something where I really wanted to go, but it felt too difficult to make that step. I mean, come on. I was Frau Dr. Britta Schmitz, working at university in Basel in Switzerland, applying for a grant for a study, which we actually got. And then I go like, I just moved to this tiny Hebridean island and I'm going to muck out composting toilets, cook food, work in the organic gardens, gather seaweed, cook. Yeah, it felt like a big step. And, for me, I come from central heated Germany. I didn't know that little stone cottages with wood burning stoves where you drink rainwater and you bathe in peat water. And you have composting toilets outside. I didn't know that existed. I mean, not in my reality. I found that all very wildly romantic.
And just for our listeners, Arid being, I guess, would you call it an eco farm that's owned by the Findhorn Foundation?
Well, so the thing is, Arid is a small Hebridean island, 1 square mile big. Well, for everybody, Anka the dog is eating.
Yeah,
so you hear some munching in the background.
So it's a 1 square mile big tiny Hebridean island, which is owned by a Dutch family. And on this island, there's a row of old lighthouse keepers' cottages from the 1870s. So in this row of lighthouse keepers' cottages, part of the Findhorn Foundation lives. So it's like kind of like a sister community because they are part of the Findhorn Foundation and somehow not. So it's really difficult to explain. But basically, we are all under the same common ground, the same principles we live by. But they live on the West Coast and the Findhorn Foundation is here on the East Coast. Yeah. And it is, if you describe it a bit like an eco farm, that's also true. Yeah, but it is more like a spiritual community living a sustainable life. And it is, we meditate, or they, I'm not living there anymore. There's meditation, there's singing, there's lots of connection to the land. Growing their own food, cooking, looking after the guests, looking after the boats. So it's
maybe like 15 people living there at a time, is it?
It's more like, so the ideal number of people living there is 9. So there are 7 cottages where residents can live, and it's a mixture of single people, families, couples, whatever. And then you also have the guests in your cottages. So the ideal number, they say, of people, residents really living there is 9, but sometimes it's 4 or 5. And these 4 or 5 people take care of the island. Sometimes they are long-term guests or people who are in this membership process. And there are new guests most weeks.
And as you said, you're a very, very sociable person, and you love people and people love you. So that must have been a massive change of life, living in a place where there's maybe only 5 or 6 people.
Absolutely, because before that, I can recall times, especially on Sundays, if I didn't have 2 or 3 things I had planned to do with people, I would feel like, oh my God, what am I going to do now? I would feel really anxious. It was like I think my life was a lot about people, and maybe to not be so much connected to myself and look into what's really going on. So I think this was the first time for me finding out that I'm actually an extrovert. So that I do, and I mean it, and I feel it when I see people. I get animated. I get, wow, that's amazing. That's exciting. I love people so much. It's amazing. But it also drains me. I'm exhausted afterwards because I don't know, it somehow seems to take so much energy. So I'm not like the typical introvert. I'm not the typical extrovert. I'm kind of like a mixture of both, I guess. Anka tells me that that's going on too long. She needs to go outside. So I think that was the first time in my life where I realized, I also have this introverted part in me. So it's not just, when I'm alone at home, I get all sad and go depressed. It's like, when I'm alone, there's so much space for other things also to happen. So I think it was the first time where I realized that on Erid. And there's also there is no social pressure because in the evenings, there's nothing to do. You read a book, you talk to your neighbor, maybe even watch a film. But even in the beginning, that wasn't really possible. There was no internet or, it was just like you were really just there. Stare into the fire, go for a walk, talk to the neighbors. There was just nothing. Nothing. There was not even a phone. I didn't have a mobile phone. So there was a pay phone in one of the houses, and I called my mom once a week on a Sunday from that pay phone. I mean, we had a modem. I don't know if you still remember these times.
With the beeping noises.
Yes.
AOL kind of era.
And you could use it, I think, per day for 2 hours, and often it didn't work at all. So it was really a completely different life. And then I think the second time where I really noticed how introverted I am was during lockdown, where all of a sudden, there's nothing to do. And I really explored so much nature connection on a much deeper level then again. Yeah.
How long were you on Erid for?
5 years.
So then that must have been a really big change again, leaving Erid after 5 years of that sort of lifestyle, that more introverted lifestyle.
And when I moved to Erid, I talked to one of the residents who stayed there for quite a long time. And I said to him, like, yeah, but how will I know when it's time to move on? And he said, the island will tell you. And I was like, the spiritual blah, blah. I mean, it's like, And then, I mean, for me, every time I left the island and I did something else, I mean, it was really like I loved Erid so much, and I still love Erid. It's like beyond words. It's really, I love it so much. It's like really like the home of my heart, the home of my soul. I love it so much. And I know I can't live there. It's just like, it feels like the relationship of my life, but I know I can't be with that island. And every time I go there, it really throws me, because it's like, I love it and love it and love it. And I know, like, I just can't live there. It's just not right. So, however, whenever I came back from wherever I was, the closer I came to Erid, I would start crying basically on the bus on Mull, because I loved it. It was really returning to the love of my life, to the way of life I really wanted to live. And it wasn't always easy there. I mean, Erid is anything but easy. But it was like, I knew that this is really what I wanted with all my heart. And then one day I returned, and I felt it coming for quite some time. I had spent like maybe 3 months here in Finton, so I felt it coming. I knew it will be time to move on at some point, but I didn't know where to go and what to do, so it was all quite vague. And I came back to Erid and I was like, not one day longer. I'm done. It was really like, I don't want the mud, and I don't want the cold, and I don't want this, and I don't want that. And it was like, I just want to go. And then I left within 3 weeks. And then I came to Finton, and as I didn't want to commit, I did work exchange, and I was like, yeah, I just come for a while. And then after a few weeks, my friend Julia said, Britta, I come on the bus, I bring your boxes, you're done. And I was like, no, don't. And she just came and dumped my boxes, and yeah, I was done.
And you've been in Fintorn ever since. One of the reasons why we're having this podcast today is, I guess, to do with the messages that you put out every day in social media and the ways in which they connect with people. But, and like for me personally, my mother tunes in every single day.
Whenever I see you, I try to film
and
you.
She will most definitely be listening to this. I want to say hi to my mum.
Hi, Column's mum.
She watches all of your videos. She reads all of your messages. And I think for us, that was a really big thing because I came here a year and a half ago, and I come from Glasgow, from a lovely family, a very, I guess, we're a conventional family. We live a conventional life in Glasgow usually. So when my parents found out that I was moving up to this hippie eco-village, then there was a lot of fear and trepidation. And even for my mum, who is really interested in her own like spirituality and nature and everything, she was excited for me in that way. But there was a lot of trepidation that maybe I was like running away to a cult, or maybe that this place wasn't safe, or that they just had all these wild fantasies of what maybe was going on. So as I moved here, then my mum started getting interested in the Fintorn Foundation Facebook. And then she seen you on there, and she seen the kind of things that you were saying, and she really connected with you. And then I think she really felt, my son is safe. My son's in a good place. There's people like Britta there, so it's going to be okay. So I really want to thank you for that. And I'm sure the Fintorn Foundation Facebook, it reaches like thousands and thousands of people. So there must be thousands of people out there that feel the same way about you.
Oh, thank you.
Have you had a lot of responses from people along those lines? How's that been?
It's definitely an interesting journey, because when I started, it was, Alex asking me, can you put some posts on Facebook? And then I looked what the Fintorn Foundation was putting on Facebook, and then I saw like 3 pictures of the original garden saying like, this is the original garden. And I was like, oh my God, I can't do that. So I said to Alex, can I do it a bit more personal? And he was like, yeah, just do it whatever you think. And so before I knew it, I held the camera in my face, sitting in my bed, holding the camera in my face, saying like, oh yeah, hi, I'm Britta. I'm going to post some more now on Facebook, just that you know me. Oh yeah, I'm sitting here in Pine Ridge. Look, it's raining outside, blah, blah, blah. And then I posted it. And then weeks later, after I did a few posts, which were more personal, because I also said I want to sign with my name, because I feel social media is about people. Yeah. People want to hear from other people. And I always also encourage other people to write posts and sign with their name, because, you know, I'm not unique. There are many people around here doing exactly the same thing. It's just like they are not posting on Facebook or like doing similar things. So, when Alex then said to me, oh, do you know we have, I don't know how many followers, like thousands of followers. I think it's so brave of you to just like film yourself saying things. And I was like, oh my God. So for me, it was like I always imagined, I don't know what I imagined, but it was definitely a very personal thing. Trying to share in my personal way, but also in the communities or a spiritual way, or the way I experience our core values, our spirituality. I mean, basically, often I sit down at 4 a.m. and something just comes through. I write it down and that's it. I mean, it's like often I have pictures on my phone, which I don't even know why I took it. I just know there's something about it that really touched me and I don't know what it is. And then I look through my pictures And then I go like, yeah, there's something about this picture, but I really don't know what it is. And then I wake up at 4 a.m, and then it's generally a bit of a personal story, but that connects to a bit of a bigger picture. And before I know it, I wrote this thing down and I go like, whew, I don't know where this is coming from. And I remember some posts being like really personal, like about my grandmother, and you know how she always says like, oh, you know, there's always a light or a way or a path. And you know, what I'm going through compared to what she went through, like in the wartime, having to gather food, going out and finding food for her family. I mean, really. So I feel like, yeah, I don't know where all that stuff comes from. And well, it felt quite okay to share all that while we were in lockdown, because I wouldn't see any real person who would give me feedback on that. Yeah. And people were very kind and writing nice comments on Facebook. So I felt really blessed that I didn't have too many bad experiences with people commenting. So I would get the occasional message. I would also sometimes even get like a letter, or people would send me something, which always felt really special. And this still happens sometimes. And it's always like really nice. It's always connecting to something I post. Like I had for a time when I still lived in the other house, I had this little robin that would come into the house. And, you know, I had this real relationship with the robin. So people would send me robin cards or a robin candle or something. That was really sweet. Or now somebody sent me a really nice book about the spiritual energies of Fintorn, which is not in print. So people have sent me books, which I really also appreciate, because then I can work with them and put it into my post. So that's really nice. But now that people are coming more again, I have experiences where I go like to a little workshop, and then you pair up, and then I pair up with somebody I don't know, and then we introduce each other, and then they go like, oh, so you're the Britta that is the Facebook girl. And I go like, yeah. So I feel like now I'm meeting all these people who know so much more about me than I know about them. And I go like, how do I feel about that? And I don't know how I feel about it, because I think for me it's also like, yes, I'm doing the writing, but as I say, I'm not special. Like all of us have these experiences. I mean, as I say, I can't make statements for everybody, but many of us have, I believe, just as much to say as I have, and different things. And, you know, it would be nice to hear more voices, because I'm not so super unique. It's just like I am doing what I'm doing at the moment.
And you have the willingness to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Like publicly expressing your feelings and things like that. That's the difference. Most
obviously
people don't.
Crying in this interview.
Yeah.
But it is challenging, because sometimes I remember I wrote this one post about the Christmas tree. I had this Christmas tree, and then I had this really nice experience that the pine cones opened because it was so warm. So I was sitting here and I had this really nice, you know, I heard these nice crackly noises and I was like, wow, that's so beautiful. Why do I feel so comforted? What's going on? And then I realized, oh, it's the Christmas tree with the pine cones. They are opening, and that's normally what happens out in the summer on the first warm day when the pine cones are opening to spread their seeds. So I was like, oh, this is why I feel so comfortable. So I wrote this post and it really took me some time to press post, because I thought, what if there's somebody who just like puts me down for having a dead tree in my house, you know, for Christmas. So I also explained like they need to get thinned out anyway to keep our woods healthy, and this is why we have these trees anyway at that time of year, so I can use it. But you know, I felt, I'm getting a bit like, yeah, what happens when somebody makes a bad comment? It's not very comfortable, and it does happen. But I can understand why people don't want to do it and make themselves vulnerable and really share deeply. And now, you know, I notice, and it's interesting because there are many people who I swear never pressed a like, or, you know, just like secretly hang in there and read things. I had a talk to one person like that the other day who I thought would never look on our Facebook, and said, oh, I really appreciate the posts you are writing. And I was like, wow, I had no idea you were following. So it's an interesting thing. It was definitely never my aim to, I don't know what my aim was, but it's just like finding myself in this position where so many people know about my personal life. It's a strange thing. But, I still feel if if I post one thing per day that reaches one person and just like gives them this extra little something to feel a bit happier in their lives, then it's worth it. It's worth for me making myself more vulnerable. And just hearing from you is like, oh, wow, that's lovely that your mom felt safer for you to move to the wild hippies, which I really don't think we are so much, by reading my post.
More tame tea break hippies.
Yeah.
Just one more question. So you had like a life, you had like a different sort of life before moving to places like Erid and Findhorn. So you have people from that time in your life, like so friends and family from back then. And I guess some of them must be following your posts.
I actually don't know. Sometimes I actually say like to my mom, hey mom, I wrote something really nice. Did you see it? And she goes like, no. I go like, I just sent you the link, okay? And then she has a look through and she goes like, oh yeah, that's really nice. So I don't know if there are many. I think people who have been here in Findhorn and who I met here, they are following. But people from before, I'm not sure. But sometimes I actually see the odd like, because I do look at people's likes. Even though I shouldn't care, but I do, because I do like to see, do I know people,
I would do the same.
Yeah, right? So, and then sometimes I see people I'm actually not in touch with, but I know from school or something. And I see, oh, wow, they're actually following that. That's quite interesting to see then. But I actually don't know how many people from home are following or if they are. Yeah. And I mean, I don't have my own Facebook page anymore because something happened and then I was thrown out. So I'm not looking at that anymore. So it's also very interesting to see like, oh, wow, I'm just like really only doing the Findhorn Foundation Facebook. So I kind of am not doing my personal Facebook anymore. So I'm, not sure what people are doing or not doing, whom I know.
Just like your poster, I think today's conversation, I think people will connect to a lot of things that you've said. I think... I feel really touched today after hearing like more about your life and more about your process, and it's got me thinking. It's got some cogs turning in my head as well, in my heart. So thanks a lot for today's conversation. I think this will do good for people as well to hear this.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think if I want to say one more thing, it's really like, I hate getting so emotional. That's not what I want to say. But I think what I really want to say is like, just don't wait for life to, present you with a big challenge that makes you want to live the life of your dreams. Just do it, just do it. Because when I think of my partner who died, he had several wake-up calls. He had a big accident with his motorbike. They thought he had leukemia, which he didn't. So he had several calls, really calling him to, hey, change your life, do something differently. And he didn't. I mean, I'm not saying this is why he got cancer and died. I'm not saying that, definitely not. But it's like, don't wait for the wake-up calls, just like really feel, where's your passion, where's your bliss, where do you want to go, and go for it.
This is our Barrow, so thank you everyone for listening.